What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Sober Fix podcast channel. If you've been through addiction yourself, if you have a family member who's been through addiction, thinking about getting sober, already sober, this is the channel for you. We've got another great episode on. We got Tim Lineaweaver. You guys don't want to miss this one. He's been sober since 1984, battled crack cocaine addiction, alcohol, tried other stuff. Then he went to rehab. Then he got sober. Then he became a therapist. He's still a therapist to this day. I think it's over 30 years. He's got the unique position to where he's been through the addiction himself, but then he also has all the medical training and education and experience. So it makes for a great episode. Let's get into it, guys. What's going on, guys? We're back. Another episode of the Sober Fix podcast. Hopefully everyone is just chugging along and doing well in their sobriety, or if there's any family members of those that suffer from addiction that are coming on and listening, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the support. Anyone who presses play on this stuff and takes the time to watch it, comment, share, like, all of that stuff. It's really appreciated. So we've got a great guest on today. We've got Tim Lineaweaver. I was just asking him how he says his last name. Super cool name. I love it, Tim. Tim is an addiction and recovery writer, speaker, counselor. He was a therapist for 30 years. Did I get that right, Tim?
I'm still a therapist now. I'm working half time, so I'm still at it. Yep.
Oh, so you're still at it today, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome, man. And Tim, you've been sober since 1984. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, 1984.
Wow. How does that feel today?
You know, it feels absolutely wonderful, and the joy and even the surprise and the benefits of being clean and sober. I even on really tough days, still feel really grateful and happy to be clean and sober. So it hasn't worn off, it's still there.
Which is exciting for someone like me who has over 5 years, or anyone listening that has a year, 10 years, 15
Yep.
years. I think that gives, I think it just gives us a lot of hope. It's like, man, someone's been sober for so many years and they're still enjoying it. They're still at it. They're still growing. They're still learning. Do you feel like it's always kind of like a continual process of growth and just learning new things and just enjoying it?
Yes, absolutely. I think the challenges are different and probably not probably, but definitely much less so than they used to be. I tell people my first year was really a rock fight. There were wonderful, great moments in my first year, but my addiction had really kind of decimated my life and blew a lot of things up. And so I had a lot of rebuilding to do, and I still feel like the addiction kind of had its tentacles in me still, and so it was challenging. And it over time, and it smoothed out. But what I would tell anybody, even somebody that's just even contemplating recovery, who might be listening in, or somebody who's just got a couple days and they're struggling, I never thought I'd be able to get clean and sober. And I think I'd like for people to feel hopeful about that. If you work at it, you can get well, and just commit and stay with it, and good things will come your way.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. My first year I was still coming out of the fog. I was waking up to a lot of this wreckage that I had created around me that I
Yeah.
wasn't even like fully aware of yet until I got sober, and I felt really just uncomfortable. But you're right. It was the same thing for me. I just kept working at it day by day, and things they finally started to get better. And I remember when they did, I'm like, yes, I'm finally feeling better. But Tim, I want to kind of start off in the beginning. Why don't you tell us, where are you from? Where'd you grow up for childhood?
Primarily, I grew up on Cape Cod. a small town called Woods Hole. A lot of people have heard of it because there's a couple of world-renowned scientific institutions here. We spent also some time in New York City. My father worked for Sports Illustrated back in the fledgling days of the magazine, like from 1956 when I was born until 1960. And his story and mine are very bound up in one another. He developed alcoholism. He lost that job, and then him and my mother came up this way, kind of fell in love with Cape Cod. A guy told him, a friend of his told him, hey, you should come up here and check out Cape Cod. There's a lot of good fishing and a lot of good drinking up here. And so that appealed to him. And he came up here, and I have a brother that's about 2 years older than I am, and my father's alcoholism was really one of the defining features of my story because obviously it affected our family very much.
Yeah, so you kind of knew even as a kid that he was struggling with alcohol?
Yeah, it was very obvious. He wasn't kind of what you might call a functional alcoholic. He was a very heavy drinker, even early on. His alcoholism progressed over time. Um, the story is sort of one about generational trauma. He had a lot of trauma from his father, and he kind of repeated the whole thing. He was a really good writer, obviously at being at Sports Illustrated. He ended up writing a book as well, but um, he was verbally abusive, sometimes physically abusive. And the other thing about him was that he would just do these really crazy self-destructive things, bloody things that nobody would, even be able to like, my God, why did you do that? And so we were always kind of on edge about what was going to happen next. And I know that for my mother, my brother, and I, um, we all kind of had that trauma, and it affected us deeply. And
Yeah.
I was always like, oh my God, I don't want to be like him. And unfortunately, um, when I was older and kind of into my first marriage, one day I kind of woke up and realized I am becoming just like him. And it was sort of a stark moment. And not long after that, I got sober myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when do you remember when you first kind of found the magic in alcohol? Do you remember how old you
Yes,
were?
I do. I'm writing a memoir about that, but and sort of telling my whole story. But I remember an interesting thing just to mention. I had like in our neighborhood, it was a very small town, but there were like maybe six other uh, guys that I was really close to, sort of, in early adolescence and on forward. And looking back, every one of them had alcoholism in their family. And one of those guys called me up one day. I was uh, in my 13th year. I wasn't 13 yet. I was 12 and some change. And he said, hey, I stole a six pack from my neighbor. Do you want a drink? And I was like, yeah, it was sort of like, oh, that sounds exciting. Maybe I can find out, what all the hoopla is about. My father just loved to drink. And so we met in this field, and we kind of, opened our flip top Budweiser cans, and we managed to, get the first one down. And then maybe, like three-quarters of the way through the second one, I just felt this wonderful easing in my chest, and a really like relaxed feeling. And the guy I was with, we'll call him Bobby. I just felt like such a kinship and closeness to him. And, it was a really great moment. And we both just sort of erupted in happy laughter, without even saying anything. And it was, it's sort of like, you can probably relate, and I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate. It's sort of like, you meet that other person that's just beautiful and you fall in love. Well, I've kind of felt that way about that second and third beer, that feeling of just, relaxation and no worry, and that kind of hyper vigilance I always had just went away. It was a really magical moment, and it was the beginning of a long relationship, and I always tell people in the beginning that the costs are minimal and the benefits are really high, and then over time that whole metric flips, and the benefits become minimal and the cost becomes huge, and that's sort of what the progression of the disease does to us.
Yeah, it was oh man, I could totally relate to that. As you're describing the second beer going down and just feeling that warmthness and also too, like you mentioned with your friend, it was like, I don't know, I just felt super connected to whoever I was with. It was like that night out was just everything. It's like just about that moment, like living in the present. I only felt that way when I was younger, when I discovered alcohol, and eventually I found it later on in sobriety and in recovery. But
Right.
it's hard to think when you first try it and you get such a great experience in the beginning. At least for me, it was hard to believe that it was ever going to go bad. I was like, "What?
Right.
This is great. This is good
Yeah.
stuff." But yeah, it was just amazing how quickly it went bad. I want to ask you, after you drank that time and you kind of realized that it was a lot of fun, did you continue drinking from that point on, or were you too young? When did you really start picking it up?
Well, I would say probably when I really started to pick it up, I would say, like for the next couple of years, it was kind of spotty. If I got a chance, I'd take it. And, if some other kid, had something, and maybe we drink together, but it was kind of hit or miss. I would say 16, the summer of when I was 16, I really started to drink on a regular basis, like, uh, 4 or 5, even more times a week, and also to the point of intoxication. It wasn't like, I would have one or two and that would be it. It was, the goal for me was to catch the buzz, to feel that connectedness, which I struggled to feel. Like I was very self-conscious and shy. And so if if I was around, even around people I knew well, I was pretty reserved and kind of like anxious about how I was coming off. And that was another thing about drinking, that it really took that away. And I did feel that closeness to others. And I think that is at least a frequent phenomenon for a lot of us that become alcoholic. It's because we struggle to connect with other people, and alcohol really helps that. So, and we crave that connection, and so we continue to use it. And when I was 16, I really started to party heavier, and it really advanced over those coming years. Um, the other thing that I tell people is, when I was the drinking age here in Massachusetts was 18 when I was 18.
Oh,
So yeah, and I think as they discovered all the mayhem and damage that was happening with that, they raised it to 19 when I was 19, and then they went to full 21. Um, but the thing about Cape Cod is that here there are higher rates of alcoholism and addiction than there are I think, more broadly in the state of Massachusetts. It's just the way it is. It's a lot of drinking, a lot of drug use here. And when I was a kid, and of course, this is going back a long way, but everybody smoked, everybody drank heavily. Like my parents' friends, like you'd walk into a room and it'd just be haze of smoke, and everybody would be drinking, and it was just sort of normalized. And of course, I came of age, in the '60s and '70s, and uh, at that point, drugs were also becoming very much a part of the equation as well.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. What kind of drugs did you get into when you were younger?
I did a lot of drugs. I, like early on, I really enjoyed, and I kind of romanticized drug use. Like I think a lot of us did. Like it was cool, and you wanted to be part of the cool other groups. And so, not long after I drank for the first time, I smoked weed for the first time. Not long after that, I had a friend. He was a little older than I am. He was friends with my brother and I, and he was kind of a troubled kid in some ways, but he was also very likable and funny. And it was this summer, and I was 13, and I was with a bunch of kids, and we were kind of sitting around, just kind of shooting the bull, and I was drinking a Coke, and I finished the Coke off, and he says to me, "Hey, congratulations, you just did a hit of Purple Haze." And then he said, "I have to go. I'll see you later." And he took off, and I was like, I was kind of horrified. I'd heard, all these scare stories about LSD, and next thing I knew, I was hallucinating. And I mean, I kind of hesitate to say this, but it was actually a really wonderful experience. But after that experience, it was like 10 hours of absolute ecstasy. Then I chased LSD for like a whole year. And of course, I never had that experience again. I had some good experiences and some bad experiences with it, but it was in my nature to like always be seeking, the best high I could. So after about a year of LSD use, I felt burnt out on it and stuff. And I tried other things like Quaaludes. And then in my later teens, probably around 18 or 19, I did cocaine for the first time. And the way I experienced cocaine was that it was this instantaneous, very marvelous antidepressant.
Oh,
And so I was sort of like, that was if you did cocaine, you were cool back then. And so I wanted to be cool. And I wanted to not be depressed, because without alcohol or cocaine, I was. And so I started to abuse that drug very regularly. And here on Cape Cod, during the late '70s and '80s, cocaine was absolutely everywhere. It was, if you went to a party, there'd be people locked in the bathroom doing it. There'd be a mirror going around, there'd be people in different areas. And about the time that I was doing it, I would do like small amounts, like a quarter gram or a half a gram. I'd split it with a friend, and we'd drink some beer and kind of get high and talk a lot and stuff and stay up late. And it was kind of social and fun. And then I met this guy that came into town, and he was sort of an interesting character. He was smart and funny, and he sort of had this he had this country club affectation, sort of like he dressed very preppy, and he called me old boy all the time, sort of affection. And I was very attracted to that kind of, my father just verbally abused me all the time. Here was a male that was kind of like, nice to me and stuff. And anyway, he turned out to be a dealer, and he was involved with some pretty heavy duty guys. And so he was new to town. He's sort of like, hey, like, can you help me sell coke? And I was like, sure, I can. This is great, and he would get me high all the time, very generously, and I would steer business to myself and to him if I, really trusted somebody. And it got to the point where we were pretty involved. And so when we're talking about progression, again, I said, maybe a quarter gram or a half gram. Now we're talking about, an eighth of an ounce, a half an ounce, a quarter ounce, an ounce. And it really kind of got out of control. And then, just to finish the loop on that, then I remember I was at a party one night, and people were drinking, and I smoked cocaine for the first time. And it was immediately addictive to a point that terrified me. Like, I knew I was going to chase that high right down to the end, and I did, and it bankrupted me, literally, financially, and it blew up every aspect of my life. And I had managed somehow to get married, and I had a daughter, and my soon-to-be ex-wife threw me out of the house, refused to let me see my daughter anymore, understandably. But I would do stuff like I would stay up for 3 or 4 days just smoking cocaine around the clock, not doing anything else, not caring about anything else. And I just, if you had locked me in a room with like just a massive pile of cocaine and said, have at it, I would have gone in there and stayed in there for the rest of my life. But um, with everything that happened, and things were so destroyed, the relationship, my finances, I finally reached out to a therapist for help when I was 27, after my wife had thrown me out of the house. And she was a very good addictions therapist. And she told me pretty much right away, listen, you have a huge problem here. You should go to treatment. You need to go to meetings. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I'm like, I'm not doing any of that. That's too much. I think I can just kind of, you know, make a few adjustments and everything will be okay. And she was like, okay. She said, let's see how you do. And she was smart, And so I went like 1 week and I relapsed, and, all hell broke loose. And anyway, I there were a series of relapses. And then finally, I first saw her like in, I think it was March or April. And then in August, late August of '84, I had a little bit of money left, and she made a call to the treatment center, and they agreed that if I came up there with cash, they would detox me and they give me 30 days treatment. And so I did that, and I learned a tremendous amount there. It was really great. And then I came home, and I really kind of went big on recovery. I did a meeting every day. I continued in therapy with my therapist, which was a really important aspect of this, because I basically have complex PTSD. And so, going along with the addiction, I didn't mention this earlier, but I also had an incident of sexual abuse when I was a kid. And I never told anybody that. I was like, I'm not, like, that secret is going to die with me. And then my therapist got me into group therapy, and when I was there, I kind of talked about that and let the cat out of the bag a little bit, and I got a lot of support around that and around the other things, and so um, like I said, it was a tough first year, but at my 1 year anniversary, I kind of felt like, what, I think maybe I can keep doing this. And the other thing I would say is I wanted to keep doing it. Like things were getting enough better so that I was like, okay, this is good. I want to keep going with this. And so I did. I when I was 30, I went back to community college, and then I transferred up to Boston to a 4-year school and completed bachelor's. I took a year off, um, and then got remarried, and then went to graduate school, and that's how I got into the field.
Wow, what a
So,
story. That's
yeah,
I'm sitting there listening to that. It's so much I can relate to, and wow, just to go from, smoking the cocaine and then finally going to treatment. And I could really relate to when you were talking about talking to the therapist, and she's going, "Hey, okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go to rehab, you're going to go to meetings, you're going to do this, you're going to do that." And you're like, "It's a little much. I think I think I'll figure this out on my own." And she kind
yeah.
of let you fall, she kind of let you fall.
I have a great saying for that a client once told me. I was working on an inpatient unit, and this guy came in, and I'm like doing his intake. I just met him, and he was going to be my client, so we're talking a little bit. And he kind of sighed, and I said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "I can't even believe I'm here." I'm like, "Well, why?" And he said, "Well, I, I feel like I have a cold, and everybody's treating me like I have cancer." And I said, "Well, what happened to get you here?" And he goes, "Well, I was driving on the highway at like 120 miles an hour, and then the cops chased me, and I got arrested, and I got a DUI." And I said to him, "You have it backwards. You actually have cancer. You just think you have a cold." And I didn't say it in a kind of a glib, snide way, but I wanted him to think about that a little bit. And it was certainly true for me too. Like it's I look back on it, and I'm writing a book, so I'm thinking a lot about those early days. I'm thinking like, how did I ever not see how deep into my addictions I was? But you don't always. Some people do. I mean, eventually I did. And I look back now and I go like, my God, I'm so grateful to be alive. It could have turned out completely different, or I could have ended up in jail. There's all kinds of things that could have happened, and they didn't. And I definitely have cancer and not a cold. Like, but it's hard to see it sometimes.
Oh, it was so hard for me to see it. I didn't know at the time. I really didn't know what I was up against, until I got a couple years sober. It was the same thing for me. I started to look back, and I could see just how I didn't have much control over the situation at all when I really thought I did. If you would have asked me when I was in the thick of it, "Hey, what's going on with your life?" I would have told you, "Oh, I just need to slow down a little bit, or I just need to get more responsible," and stuff like that. I didn't realize that I was fighting this disease that was trying to kill me. I didn't know that
Right.
until later on. But I want to ask you, Tim. You mentioned the first year being pretty hard. What do you think helped you the most getting through that first year of sobriety?
Well, I think it was when I first came around AA. It was only AA, and there was an NA meeting in my hometown, and I would say it's like my therapist, who was amazing and supportive, and like she was one of the most empathetic people I've ever met, and she was very non-judgmental, right? Because like I think if she had said, if I picked up any hint of her being judgmental or looking down on me, I would be like, that's it, I'm out of here. She was really, I got the sense that she really cared about me and wanted to help me. And that made a huge difference. I got to I AA and NA were like they were like an oasis of calm for me. And so when I went to the program, not every last little thing that everybody said, I didn't take every last suggestion. But I felt understood there and supported there. And the NA meeting that I went to was really great. There were like maybe it was a smaller group of like 10 or 12 people that showed up every week. And there was there were 3 people that sort of ran the meeting. 2 of them were a married couple and this other guy, and together they had like 4 years of recovery. And I just thought that was like, oh my God, like you can be an addict and you can be clean for 4 years. How is that possible? And so, yeah. And I went there and I felt understood there and supported as well. And I got a lot of good suggestions. So I sort of built up the support and took advantage of it. And then the other thing was group. I was in this group that my therapist said, if you stay clean for 90 days, I'll put you in this group. And I'm like, okay. And I did it. And I went to this group and there were it wasn't like, okay, 6 weeks on early recovery. It's just the group just ran all the time. And it was amazing. I was in it for 5 years and it it uh it turned into this really cohesive kind of, there was a lot of depth to it. Like we all knew each other so well. So we weren't afraid to share some of our darkest stuff, and we would respectfully but kind of powerfully challenge each other. It was really great, and there were just a few people there that I really respected and responded to, and so that was those different elements. And I'll throw out one more. I also got a really good sponsor, and he was pretty influential and encouraging and stuff like that. And I got a lot from him as well. So it was sort of all those different elements.
Yeah, that's a lot of good stuff. I want to ask you. You kind of mentioned in the treatment center opening up about some traumatic stuff from the past, like you had that secret. How much
Yep.
relief? How much relief did you feel after finally letting that secret out? Did you feel better right away, or was there a period of time where it was kind of you felt worse, or how'd you feel finally letting that out?
Well, it happened when I was really young. It was a friend of the family's, almost like a cousin, although we weren't cousins, if you know what I mean. Like our parents always hung out together, and I had, as it turns out, there was some abuse in his family, so he was just sort of like perpetuating that. And I was only like 7 or 8 years old, so I had no frame of reference for it. It was a very, at that point, other than my father, I was pretty innocent guy. So I just decided I'm not ever going to tell anybody about this. I'm going to pretend like it didn't happen. And if nobody knows about it but me, then and I just buried it. And of course, it affected me. And I think it was also one of the drivers in my addiction as well. So um, when I finally divulged it, I was terrified to do so, but I did it in that group therapy, and everybody was really great. They just were like, how can we support you? That's terrible, so on and so forth. And then I saw my therapist, and I did feel a great deal of relief, but um, I told you my therapist was extremely empathetic, and she was, but she was also confrontational. And when I say that, I don't mean like in the sense of, like getting her back up and yelling at you in a confrontational way. But if she thought there was something you should do, she would tell you. And so she told me, you need to confront him.
Really?
And yeah, she knew a little bit, so she knew it wouldn't put me at risk. And I didn't think it would put me at physical risk. But my internal response was, there's, NFW. I'm not doing this. I don't care what I would get out of it. I'm not doing it. And so I would go to therapy, and every week, it would go around the room, and she would ask me, "Did you do it yet?" And I would be like, "No." And at one point, she said something. She said, she kind of went like this, and she looked at me. She goes, "It must be so hard for you to still be, you know, so deep into your trauma, like sort of like almost." And I was like, "Ugh." I got kind of rageful about it, and I shut up. I didn't say anything for the rest of the group. There was a chalkboard in there, and I fantasized about kicking it to pieces for the rest of the group. And then I left, and I got up the next day, and it was serendipitous. I was walking down the street, and there the guy was. And I'm like, okay, now or never. And I just pulled him aside, and I said, "Listen, man, I've been dealing with what you did for a long time, and I don't want to take responsibility for it anymore. I want you to." And he's told me exactly what she said he would say, which was, "You wanted it." And I said, I didn't want it. Who would? No. And he just kind of just went and walked away. And I immediately ran down the street, and there was a bank of payphones, like three of them. And I called her right up and told her, and she was like, "I'm so proud of you. That's awesome." And I felt great. It did really give me a lift. And I think it helped my self-esteem, just to get out from underneath that a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Thank you for sharing that on here as
absolutely.
well. I want to ask you, and you have years of experience working with people as a therapist, and you're in the unique position to where you've been through addiction yourself, which is like, I mean, they're lucky to have someone like you that understands both worlds, the professional side and just your own experience as well. I want to ask you, in all the years of working in that space, what do you think holds people back the most from kind of just attaining sobriety or decent mental health? What do you think are some of the obstacles?
Well, I think one major obstacle is just not going big enough on it. Like it's somewhat human nature, and I was guilty of the same thing. Like I don't think I need to do all that. I can do less, and it'll be okay. I can figure this out. And um, uh, I needed all the support I could get. And the sooner I was willing to give that to myself, the better off I was. And a lot of times I've used this analogy, like you have this thick, big concrete wall, and you're trying to knock it over with like a little wet sponge, throwing the sponge against the wall. That's not going to work. You could do that forever. It would never make any difference. You need a sledgehammer, right? And so I think, recognizing our addictions for what they are, seeing how big they are, and then developing solutions and support systems that are adequate to give us the support we need. I think that's one major thing. Another thing that frequently happens is that people they'll buy in for a while, and then, it is a lot of work. There's no way around that. You got your job, you got meetings, you got therapy. It's like you've got to hustle all the time. But a lot of times people will just kind of peel away from those support systems too early, and then they'll relapse. Um, I don't do this a lot, but I still think a little bit about uh, my active addiction, and I think about, like, okay, what did it feel like, and what was it like waking up, the next day, and just being mortified about something that I said or did, or having a blackout, and not having any idea what it was when I woke up. I remember those sorts of things. I don't punish myself with it, but I know that if I pick up again, that's where I'm going to go. I don't have any doubt about that. And I think sometimes maybe people get away from it a little bit. That can be an issue as well. I think that, the other thing can be that trauma can complicate things a lot. And maybe um, sometimes people shy away from, really getting into their trauma issues, or sometimes they get into their trauma issues too quickly. You need to kind of time that a little bit. So anyway, those are some of the things that I've seen over the years.
Yeah, as you're talking about kind of remembering how bad it was, I try and always remember how bad it was, and I'm the same way. I don't. It's not for me to punish myself over. It's really just to be realistic, and when I think about kind of my worst days when I was out there, it makes, like, my bad days today look not so bad. Like, I'm pretty grateful. It brings me, like, gratitude right away, because if I'm at work today and I'm like, "Man, I'm stressed out and I woke up late and I gotta do all this stuff," and then I remember what it was like for me, like, getting off opiates day 5 like, a jail cell and going through withdrawals, and I'm like, "You know what? Today is not really that bad." Like, today's today's okay, but, I want to ask you, Tim. A lot of people when they get sober, they deal with kind of the opposite of what I was just talking about, where they are beating themselves up over stuff, and they just kind of dwell on it, and I've seen it with people that get sober when they're older, especially, and they kind of just have that thought track of, man, I've wasted my life. I've wasted so many years. I'm such a bad person. Just the shame and the guilt. What would your advice be to just kind of starting to move to work past the shame and guilt of all those years?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that, because I do think it's an issue for a lot of people. I know that it was an issue for me as well, and so what I believe about recovery is it gives us the opportunity to be the person that we were meant to be, and it gives us the opportunity to reach kind of the upper stratus of our potential, whereas with our addictions we're more down in the cellar. Like, trying to do life with an addiction is like having your hands tied behind your back. And I think I don't know any addict that hasn't had at least a fair amount of shame and remorse, and that I myself included. um and what I would say about that is, well, that just, it underlines the importance of getting clean and sober today, and letting yourself be a person that you want to be. That's one of the things I love about recovery. You're talking about bad days, and yeah, like the problems that you have in recovery compared to your addiction, it's like night and day. And I know that I can be the person I want to be in recovery, practically all the time. I can still do something that I'm not proud of. uh, I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But I can say that today I like myself, and that I feel like I can do good things. And the good things that I do, I think, outweigh the bad things that I did before. And recovery will give that to you, and if you let it and if you work on it. So what I would say is, forgive yourself. Um, that's a big important thing, I think, in recovery. It takes time to do that. I would also say for probably the vast high percentage of us addicts and alcoholics, um, trauma is the thing that drove our addiction. So it's not like we're bad, immoral people, but all that stigma stuff. Um, I know that if I didn't have trauma, I wouldn't have chased alcohol and cocaine like I did.
Yeah, and I was actually going to ask you that how often you kind of see trauma closely associated with someone's addiction. Is it pretty often?
I would say the vast majority of the time. And one thing for the other thing I would say, and one of the reasons I talk openly about being sexually abused is because I think for a lot of men that I encountered on inpatient units in treatment, um, a lot of them were carrying that secret. It's not, for us men, it's not okay to say that somebody sexually abused me. It's sort of like kind of not the macho thing. But I think that a lot of men have been sexually abused. Not all of them, obviously, but many have, and that's something that a lot of guys carried that I've worked with.
Yeah, that's interesting. I could imagine that that'd be something that would be hard to carry around, and I feel like sometimes women are so good about kind of talking about stuff they've been through, but as men, I think a lot of times we just kind of hold it in, and I'll deal with this myself, and But yeah, Tim, I wanna ask you, you've been sober for a lot of years now. How do you kind of stay so motivated and kind of maintain that good mental health with so many years of sobriety? How do you not kind of get complacent or feel like, hey, I'm good now, I could just relax? What keeps you
Well,
like putting in the work?
um, like I just the the work isn't the work is good. I like the work. The work leads me to better places. I want to try to be a good therapist for other people trying to get clean and sober. I want to try to be a good husband, and I want to continue to try to be a good father. Recovery is, really helped all those different areas. Um, I just, and again, it's very easy to think back to when I was using and the unhappiness and all the misery, and I just don't want to go back there. I just have no interest in that. And so I would define spirituality in probably in very different ways than many people do, but for me, it's about um, you know, self-care, getting the right amount of sleep, eating right, exercise is a huge thing for me. Um, and that exercise is, to me, it's a spiritual pursuit. I took up boxing when I was like in my middle 50s and learned how to box and then fought in some tournaments in New York City. Um, I gave that up after getting a concussion, and my family confronted me and said, we don't want you doing that anymore." So I took up jujitsu, and I'm kind of learning that, and those kinds of pursuits have really they augment my recovery. Um, they help my self-esteem, The other thing is, I would say about 95% of the time, I run a lot. I skip rope. I do other workouts, and I would say 98% of the time, even if I'm not feeling, right, if I'm feeling down or if I'm feeling angry or anxious, I work out and I always feel better. There's been maybe 2 or 3 workouts where I didn't feel better, but I probably was not in a good space to work out because I was exhausted or I was ill or something like that. Um, it's really an effective way for me to kinda stay in recovery, keep my feet on the ground and that sort of thing. So it's really an important thing, and it's even more important as I age. I mean, I'll be 70 next year, so I wanna keep working at that, keep moving.
Yeah, the fitness thing for me is it's absolutely huge, and it's interesting too because over the last couple months I've been going to school. I'm taking this anatomy class, and it's been I wasn't ready for it, like crazy studying, way more studying than I ever thought. And so the one thing, because I have the podcast, I work, I ref soccer games on the weekends, and the one something had to go in my schedule, and I wasn't going to let the podcast go. And so what started to happen was I haven't got to the gym as much. And I know it's temporary. I only have like another month of this class, which kind of makes me like okay with it. But it's interesting because I've felt it over the last couple months of not being able to exercise as much. I still get running in on the weekend, but I definitely have felt it in kind of my mood and everything, and it's 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 just interesting that you talk about that because I can relate. I'm feeling it right now. Like I'll feel off because I haven't got to. The fitness thing it's a big deal. I think it helps me a lot, a lot.
Absolutely. There's you can look up, there's, a number of studies they've done on depression and anxiety, and, what they found is that, moderate cardio, 120 minutes of moderate cardio a week. So you don't have to like run a marathon or do any kind of crazy training if you don't want to, is as effective, and in some cases more effective than antidepressant medication or anti-anxiety medication. It's really a proven thing. They've done a lot of studies on that. Um, and I feel like that's true. And I didn't necessarily make the association, but when I was first getting sober, I took up running and just I was running like a lot of miles right away. And I think that was sort of like, for me, that was about trauma. It was about my recovery, and it was about, kind of fighting off cravings. And it really, I don't know where I'd be without having done that. So,
Yeah, it's definitely
exercise is huge.
yeah, it's definitely helped me as well, physically and especially for me mentally. Tim, we're kind of getting towards the end here. I want to hear about your you want to tell us about your book? You're still writing it right now?
I'm still writing it. It hasn't come out yet. I'm looking for a publisher, but I'm still revising. It's getting there. I have a Substack that I do a lot of writing. People can subscribe to that. It's called From Wreckage to Recovery. If you want, it's always free. If you want some free information on recovery, there's like something like 55 essays on there that, and I come out with a new thing every couple of weeks, so people can look at that. And I'm going to keep writing my book, and I'm getting published is really hard, but I'm going to just commit myself to that and get it done somehow. So hopefully in the future I'll have information about that. Uh, so
Cool, man. Yeah, let me know when you have that. I'll put it up on the episode details. Something I normally ask everyone towards the end is and you've covered a lot of advice. You've covered a lot of amazing stuff for people to start looking at, whether they've been sober for years or are early on. But I typically ask everyone that comes on here, kind of, what is your advice to someone who's just starting their journey and maybe they've never been sober before. Maybe they were someone like me that just struggled over and over again. I know you mentioned you had a couple relapses. What would your advice be to someone just starting out? They don't have the community yet. They don't have all the support yet. Where do they even get started?
Well, I think you said an important word there, community. Um, and if you find community, I think the odds of staying clean and sober go way up, right? And it's not up to me to say, like, nowadays there's a lot of different self-help for people, right? There's smart recovery, there's refuge recovery, which sort of takes a Buddhist approach to things. There's a lot of great, there's Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, they're all free. And if you can just push your mind open, go to a meeting, grab onto somebody, say hello, that kind of thing, that's the beginning of having community. Community for me is what made the difference. And I was really stuck in a culture of addictions. I didn't realize how blinded I was to the rest of the world in my addictions. And then when I started to go to NA and AA and I started to meet other sober people, the world really opened up and it really made a difference. I thought I didn't really think I was the only addict alcoholic in the world, but I think, we become very isolated and very stuck. And just talking to other people that had a little bit of hope and a little bit of time made a huge difference for me. You know, um, if you can afford to and you have the health insurance, grab a therapist that has addictions experience and some trauma experience. That can be a great way to go to. And don't be afraid to access treatment. The money I invested in a treatment program back in 1984, it's still paying off today. It's the best money I ever spent. So, find a way to build community and get support. And I truly believe that anybody can be clean and sober. Now, it's not going to just happen to you magically, but it's not some intense equation that only a select few figure out. It's just about digging in and doing the work and wanting it. And if you dig in and you want it and you work at it, you'll get it. And take hope that you can get well, because you can.
Yeah, I think that's all amazing advice, and it's so cool to have you on here, Tim. Like I said before, it's you having all your personal experience, and then on top of it, all your professional experience. It's pretty cool. Just throwing all these questions at you, and picking your brain a little bit. You have so much experience, man. So I appreciate you taking the. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I love being on. I really enjoyed it. Anytime you want to have me back and talk about other stuff, I'd be happy to do that. And this has been great. So thank you for having me.
All right, you made it to the end of the episode. Thank you guys for your support. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the likes, comments, shares, and the subscribers. We're over 1,000 now, so it's growing just a little bit. But I appreciate all your guys' support. I appreciate you guys coming onto this channel. I just want to say, if you want to come on the show, the Sober Fix Podcast at gmail.com. Don't forget about our TikTok at the Sober Fix, and also our Instagram at the Sober Fix Podcast. Let's go another week sober.